Former Seattle Mariner Adrian Beltre has officially made the Hall of Fame. What will Ichiro and Felix Hernandez's chances be next season? And the Kraken have a big game tonight against the last-place Blackhawks. And we'll also talk about some rumors that we've been hearing about the Seahawks coaching staff. All that and more right here on the NW Sportscast. So welcome back, guys. It is Wednesday morning, and today we are talking about the news that hit yesterday. Adrian Beltre is going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Not really known for his days as a Seattle Mariner, but still pretty cool. He will be, I believe, the fifth Mariner, the fifth person who played for the Mariners to make the Hall of Fame. He's not going to go in as a Mariner. He is going in as a Ranger, which makes sense. He had his best seasons with the Rangers, but he did play for the Mariners. So he joins Edgar Martinez, Ken Griffey Jr., Randy Johnson, and Ricky Henderson. I'm trying to think if there's any others. Gaylord Perry played for the Mariners, so maybe 6. And obviously, his years with the Mariners were not very good. They were kind of his down years, but his years with the Rangers obviously are enough to get him in to the Hall of Fame. So that's really good. I mean, congratulations to him. And he had a really good career. He ended up kind of being a Mariners killer, unfortunately. He did a lot to harm the Mariners in his career with the Rangers. But I want to pivot to talk about the two guys that would go into the Hall of Fame as Mariners, Ichiro and King Felix, both on the ballot for next year. And to talk about kind of where I see their chances are at. Because for Ichiro, he is pretty clearly a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, the 3,000 hits pretty much tells you all you need to know. Most hits ever if you count Japan, which I understand there's going to be some sports writers who are going to unfortunately probably hold his Japanese days against him, which is stupid of them. But there will be. But even despite that, Ichiro should clear 90% pretty easily. 10 straight years of hitting over 300, 10 straight All-Star, quite a few Gold Gloves in there, led the league in hits, I think, 3 times, won an MVP award. He never got that World Series ring, so that could hurt him. But he should clear 90% pretty easily. I don't see a scenario where Ichiro doesn't get in on the first ballot. The question is Felix. Does Felix have the juice to get into the Hall of Fame? And if you look at the early stats, then the answer is absolutely he does. But when you pull up his stats, I'm going to pull up his Baseball Reference page. His early years, he was incredible. Like, if you look at his peak, and when I say peak, I'm talking his first 11 seasons, 2005 until 2015. The dude was an all-timer through his first 11 seasons. He never had a season with less than 9 wins, even despite being on the Mariners. Only one season, actually, with less than double-digit wins, and that was 2008. He was 9-11. But his ERA that year was still 3.45. If you look at the ERA, his ERA was below 3.5 in 9 out of those 11 years. It was below 4 in 10 out of those 11 years. 2006 was the only year that it was above 4 in his, quote-unquote prime. Led the league in ERA twice. It was below 3 on 4 separate years. He started 30 or more games 10 years in a row. Not easy to do. He compiles 11 complete game shutouts, 25 total complete games. 25. He goes over 200 innings 8 years in a row. An ERA plus, listen to this. Listen to this ERA plus numbers. 158, then 98, then 112, 123, 171. Second place in Cy Young voting. Then 174, first place in Cy Young voting. then 109, then 124, 121, 170, and another second place in Cy Young voting, and then 108, and then 106. His total stats in his prime, 2005 to 2015. Can we get the combined number? For some reason, Baseball Reference isn't working right now. Here we go. 2005 to 2015. 143 wins, 101 losses. So an average of 13-9. Started 334 games, averaging 30 a year. 3.11 was his ERA for 11 seasons. A 3.11 ERA. 11 complete game shutouts. An ERA plus of 128. 2,142 strikeouts. The problem for Felix is that his last 4 years, he did not age gracefully. His last 4 years, he was downright bad. He did not end up hitting that 3,000 strikeout threshold that a lot of people hold Hall of Famers to. He made it to 2,500, but could not get those last 476 strikeouts that he would have needed. So that plays against him. And it's very unfortunate that it does. But people will hold that against him. And again, the lack of postseason success, people will hold that against him. If you look at the player value, his wins above replacement, 4.0 in 2008, 5.9 in 2009, 7.2 in 2010, 3.6 in 2011, 5.3, 5.1, 6.4. Total in his career, he had 49.9 wins above replacement. So he was nearly a 50 WAR player. And again, 50 WAR is no Hall of Fame threshold, but it's pretty impressive considering that he basically did 50 WAR in 13 seasons. And I think the question ultimately is, are you judging him based off his prime, or are you judging him based off his whole career? Because off of his prime, he's a Hall of Famer. Off of his prime, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But off of his career, he's not. Because those last 4 years screwed him over. According to the Hall of Fame statistics standards, Felix Hernandez is... Okay, so black ink, which is things that you led the league in, I believe. Felix has a score of 28, 75th all-time. The average Hall of Famer would be at 40. Gray ink, Felix has a score of 138. The average Hall of Famer is 185. The Hall of Fame monitor says he has a score of 67. The likely Hall of Famer is at 100. Okay. Hall of Fame standards, he has a score of 31. The average Hall of Famer, 50. So he's behind the average Hall of Famer in all of those categories. As far as Jaws, he is 96th among starting pitchers. For career WAR, and this is what's interesting. So, career WAR, 49.7 for Felix. Average Hall of Fame pitcher, 73. His peak WAR, 38.5 in his 7-year peak. The average Hall of Famer's 7-year peak, 49.9. So Felix's peak WAR is much closer to the average Hall of Famer's peak WAR than his career WAR average, and that makes sense. But then there's the final argument that Mariners fans, like myself, are going to argue, which is that Felix should not be judged because his career ended so poorly because of the injuries. Because there's one player who we regard as one of the best to ever do it, whose career was shortened because of the injuries. Felix Hernandez has a higher career WAR than Sandy Koufax. And so, if you're going to put Sandy Koufax in the class of legendary pitcher, and you're going to be able to discount the fact that he only played 11 seasons because of his injury, then Felix, why shouldn't Felix be held to that same standard? I mean, Felix was one of the top 5 pitchers in the league for a solid 6 years. And the fact that because he got a couple of injuries that ruined his velocity and eventually took him out of the league at just 33 years old, the idea that because of that, he's not going to be able to make the Hall of Fame is really unfortunate when we've set the standard of if you get injured and it derails your career, you can still be a Hall of Famer. That's the standard we've already set. So Felix, I think, should be in. But he probably won't. And I understand it. But I do think that he should hopefully be able to get a solid 10-20% of the vote. Alright, let's talk Seahawks. The coaching rumor yesterday, not one that I'm a fan of. Please don't do this. The rumor is Chip Kelly, former Eagles head coach, former 49ers head coach, current UCLA head coach. Chip Kelly wants to return to the NFL as an offensive coordinator. And reportedly, the idea is that Dan Quinn, if Dan Quinn gets hired as a head coach, would potentially bring Chip Kelly on as his offensive coordinator. So they're like a package deal. You get 2 former head coaches in one. One of them, the defensive guy, is your head coach. The other is the offensive guy. He's going to be the coordinator. Please, Seahawks, don't do this. There are some people talking about maybe the Seahawks would be the team that brings in Dan Quinn and Chip Kelly. I hope not. I really hope not. My take on Pete Carroll was always, if you're going to move off of him, then it's better be for a younger, bright, offensive-minded coach. Because those are the guys who are winning the most right now in the league. Like, this isn't a rebuild in the sense that you want to hire a veteran coach who's been there, done that. This is a situation where you are winning 9-10 games a year on average, and you looked at this team and said, with this talent, with these players, with this GM, with this fan base, and with this owner who's willing to spend money, we think we can do better than 9 wins a year. You don't fire Pete to hire a coach who has already shown you that he's a mediocre head coach. You're firing Pete to take a swing. Right? The reason we fired Pete was because we were done with being slightly above average. But hiring Dan Quinn feels like we would still be slightly above average. You got to take a swing at one of these young, hot offensive coordinators. Bobby Slowick, Ben Johnson, Frank Smith, Mike Kafka even. You got to take a shot. Dave Canales. Take a shot at one of these young guys. If it fails and you go 4-13, at least you tried. Because that is the type of coach that is doing the winning in the NFL more often than not. Look at it. Look at the numbers. Andy Reid's in the conference championship every game. Offensive coach. Star quarterback. Kyle Shanahan is in the NFC championship game every year. Offensive coach without a star quarterback. Sean McVay in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl multiple times, in the conference championship game. Offensive coach, somewhat of a star quarterback. The Bengals with Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor, back-to-back years, AFC championship game. Offensive coach, star quarterback. John Harbaugh's not an offensive coach, but he is an innovative coach with his star quarterback. The Lions got there with Dan Campbell, offensive coach. It's all the offensive guys. Sirianni. Nick Sirianni with the Eagles, offensive coach. Mike McCarthy won 12 games a year, 3 straight seasons with Dallas, offensive coach. with a good quarterback. Maybe not a star, but a good quarterback. Kevin O'Connell with Kirk Cousins won 13 games in his first season. Offensive coach with an average quarterback. The offensive coaches are the ones doing the winning in this league more often than not. Now, can you win with defense? Sure. Mike Tomlin wins 10 games a year with defense. Has he won a playoff game? I haven't seen it. You know? There's just not a lot. Like Todd Bowles won 9 games and then won a playoff game with the Bucs. He's a defensive coach. If he was in any other division, they wouldn't have won the division, though. They benefited from a really, really bad division. Look at the Browns. Kevin Stefanski, offensive coach, made the playoffs, won 11 games with 4 different quarterbacks. Shane Steichen with Gardner Minshew almost made the playoffs. Offensive coach. That's the way the league is trending. That's the way the league has turned. Offensive coaches have been doing better for quite some time now. And when an offensive coach wins the Super Bowl again this season, that would make 7 out of the last 11 Super Bowls have been won by offensive coaches. The 4 of the 11 that weren't was Pete Carroll in 2013, and then 3 from Belichick. No other defensive coaches won a Super Bowl. It's McVay, Andy Reid, Bruce Arians. Those are the guys who have been winning the Super Bowls. Offensive coaches win Super Bowls in this league. Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. Offensive coach. And so the idea that you're going to bring in Dan Quinn, a defensive coordinator who was fired 4 years ago for being a mediocre head coach and not being a good playoff coach either, and then you're going to bring in Chip Kelly, who's been fired twice, to be your offensive coordinator, I don't see how that's a good idea to me. To me, that feels like you're taking the safe play, and you know what? Can Dan Quinn and Chip Kelly win 8 to 10 games a year? Sure they can. They're smart guys. They've been around. They know what they're doing. They can win 8 to 10 games a year. But Pete Carroll also could have won 8 to 10 games a year, because that's what he's been doing. So if the plan was, we're going to fire the guy who's winning 8 to 10 games a year and replace him with 2 more guys who will also probably be winning about 8 to 10 games a year, then that's a bad decision. Because at least with Pete, you get the upside of the culture that he's created. You get the upside of the motivation that he brings to the team. And you get the upside of him being able to work with John Schneider as a terrific duo in drafting late round gems. All those things that came with Pete Carroll, besides the winning 8 to 10 games a year, now that part of it's going to be gone. So if you're getting rid of the culture aspect, you're getting rid of the motivational aspect of Pete Carroll, you got to replace it with an opportunity to actually improve your record. I don't think Dan Quinn and Chip Kelly are going to be able to improve the record. I don't see that happening. I don't see a world where they're winning 12 games and making the conference finals. I just don't think that's happening with Dan Quinn. You're like, well, he did it. He got there with the Falcons. No, Shanahan was the guy who led that offense. The Falcons' defense wasn't even that good that year. And we all saw how they imploded in the Super Bowl. I don't want Dan Quinn as my head coach, and I don't want Chip Kelly as my offensive coordinator, so I hope the Seahawks do not go in that direction. Let's talk Kraken. Kraken got a big game tonight. They are playing a last-place team, so you better win. That's all I'm going to say. The Kraken have been on a 4-game losing streak, and yeah, they have not been doing much winning. In those past 4 games, the Kraken have been outscored 15-5, so their offense has been on a major drought, but today gives them an opportunity to potentially get back into their winning ways. Kraken at 19-18-9, they are hosting the Chicago Blackhawks, who are 14-31-2. The Blackhawks are last place in their division, so you would think that this should be a winnable game for Seattle. The odds are favoring the Kraken, I believe. yeah, the Kraken are favored to win this game. And the Blackhawks, the Blackhawks just aren't a good. They're just not a good hockey team. They're averaging barely over 2 goals a game in their past week. Their offense is just not good. They don't really have any big names. Jason Dickinson is kind of their star, but he is not much of a star. This is a game that the Kraken should be able to win. And in doing that, you can end the 4-game losing streak. You can get back on track and start to figure out who you are as a team, especially offensively. They have just not been very good offensively right now. They went on that big 9-game winning streak, and then as soon as that 9-game winning streak ended, they have lost 4 in a row. And they do need to figure out, your impact players, how are you going to get them the puck? How are you going to get them scoring? Matty Beniers still out with that injury, but he hasn't even been that good this year. So that shouldn't be much of a concern. I'll take the Kraken to win this game. I'll go 3-2. I think it's a close, low-scoring game. Both of these offenses have been sputtering massively lately. So I'll say close game, but I think the Kraken will win. And start getting your season back on track if you are the Kraken. Because like I was talking about yesterday, you got to catch up to the Flames. They're 6 points behind with 36 games to go, so it is very doable, but you got to start winning soon. You got to start picking up the pace. I don't think the Oilers are going to let you catch them. So the Flames are the team you look at and say that you're 6 points behind them. I think you can catch up. And that's kind of what you got to do. So with that being said, I think we're going to wrap this video up today. We're still just kind of playing the waiting game, unfortunately, to see if the Mariners are going to make some moves, to see, who are the Seahawks going to interview next, who are the Seahawks going to be connected to next. And in the meantime, we'll keep you guys updated on the Kraken's season. Hopefully they win tonight. Like I said, I think they will. And with that being said, this is the NW Sportscast. I hope you liked what you have listened to. If you did, hit the follow button. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, make sure to follow us there. If you're not listening on Apple Podcasts, but you want to check it out, then head over to Apple Podcasts and check out the NW Sportscast. We are on Apple, Spotify, any of the podcast networks that you might be listening to. And we'd love to see you there. We appreciate all of the new listeners. Thank you all so much. We'll see you guys tomorrow.